Yeah, I started to make the film in 2010. I kind of felt like it was now or never. Like I felt like I was in a period of my life where like if I'm going to do this, I should do it now. Um,
Right.
I was in between major jobs, so I had a little bit of extra time on my hands, and I started talking to everybody I knew, filmmakers, friends, family, and I said, I'm thinking about doing this, and everybody really loved the idea. I mean, my family was a little hesitant at first, but they warmed up to the idea. I started telling my family that I was doing an oral history project, which is not, it's true, but I didn't really use the word documentary right away. So when my family learned that it was going to be publicly, shared with people as a documentary, that took some adjustment, but they got over it. So. I think as a documentary filmmaker, I feel it's important to try to talk to as many sources as you can. So I wanted to meet as many people as possible who had met my brother in his lifetime. And I just went down a list, and each person I talked to, I said, do you know other people I can talk to? And
Right.
so, one thing that I don't explore in the film is that there's many people who did not want to be part of the film,
I
who,
see.
said, the past is in the past, or why are you talking about this, or I don't want to participate. And,
Mm.
people didn't really give reasons, except I think a lot of people are very private and they don't want, to be on camera. But, so first and foremost, I tried to meet as many people and I tried to, leave no stone left unturned, as they said. Like I went to, the first time I went to Vietnam, I had nobody to meet with, and I just kind of um, gathered a team, including Vietnamese people, to try to help me do as much research as I can. Part of it was finding people that knew Jimmy, but part of it was walking in his footsteps, meaning going to the places where he went and feeling like, what was that feeling? What was the feeling like to be, literally walking the same streets that he did? I'm the only person in my family that's ever been to Vietnam other than Jimmy. So it was like a really big deal to go there for me. So yeah, there is an investigative aspect to it. And I didn't want to stop until I found out everything I could find out. I mean, I think it's very perceptive for you to use the word spiritual because my mom was an extremely spiritual person. Like she was Catholic, but she was also very progressive and liberal. But spirituality was really important to her. And I think she felt like she kind of lost a soulmate when he died. And, my mom and dad, they had a good marriage, but it was a very traditional marriage. It was a very like, they were married in the 1940s, and so my mom was like a traditional 1950s and 60s housewife, and she didn't like that very much. Like she loved having children. She had six children, but she didn't like being a traditional housewife. She would have preferred to have a career. And my father was a wonderful man, but he was also, not a very emotional man. He went to work, did his work, came home, had dinner, and went to bed. So like I think that Jimmy and my mom had a very strong relationship in terms of intellectual and cultural understanding. Like, I think they talked a lot about history and books and literature and philosophy, and they talked about things that were really, um, expansive to in my mom's mind. And then, once he died, that was just over. And I understand that because I had a similar relationship with my mom, and now that my mom is dead, like I'm missing that completely. Yeah. So, okay. So what I would say is that my goal with the film was to make a work of art. I wanted to make something that was like a cinematic work of art that was really appealing to people, that would stand alone as a work of art. And if it had therapeutic effects beyond that, then great. Like I have no problem if it has a therapeutic effect. I think it was, kind of necessary for me to do this journey in my life, and it was necessary for me to be in the film because I started filming it myself with a camera, and I was like, I don't like being behind the camera. I'm not good at it. I would rather show my journey and show me interacting with the people that knew Jimmy. And so pretty soon after I started making the film, I asked friends to volunteer to film me, and then I ended up hiring camera people. So it was never a question, I think, to me after we started that I needed to be in the film. But I also knew that I wasn't the center of attention, that I'm really kind of like a foil or an everyman that people can relate to, but that the real focus is on other people's stories. It was really hard for me because I felt like I had been lied to. And, I grew up with my brother, Andy, who had had substance abuse problems. And I grew up with that, but I didn't have the context. I didn't know that, that this was a potential issue for Jimmy. And then when I heard that from my sister, I said, well, my mom said, our mother said he died of a tropical disease, like, which is true. And so that was like part of my motivation to make the film. Like, where does the truth lie? And where does the truth lie in terms of sexuality? And I think there's plenty of people in the past that have kept secrets. People have very compartmentalized lives where like one person knows this thing about them and another person knows another thing, but when they die they might carry secrets to the grave with them, and I wanted to kind of explore that and try to dig up some of those secrets. Well, I mean, I would say a few things. One is that I really tried to explain to my family that I have a philosophy that when somebody dies, it's not only about death and tragedy, it's also about celebrating the life. So
Mm,
someone dies at 10 years old, you can look at those 10 years and what did the kid do in 10 years? Or someone dies after 50 years, what did they do in their 50 years? And when we look at Jimmy's life, he did a lot in 24 years. So I would rather look at that in a positive way than just to think about the death. I also think death is an extremely, um, it's part of life. We all die. And gradually, um, in society, we're starting to talk about it more. And, just when you think that medical science has gotten so great or that the world is more peaceful, then there's another war, there's another disease, there's always something that's going to unfortunately lead to more death. And so we have to, I think as a society, we have to learn how to talk about it more and process it through it more. When I made this film, I didn't know what it, people said, well, what's it about? And I said, well, it's about my brother who died in Vietnam. But they said, but what's it about? Like, what are the themes of the film? And now I can say it's really about grief, mourning, healing, trauma, family loss, family secrets. And as I show the film around the world, I show it in places like Italy or Greece or Amsterdam or London, and the audience members come up to me and they say, even though your story is American, it's completely like all our culture. People have these same family secrets in our culture. Things like the food and the physical beauty of the country, but I think more than anything, Vietnamese people I find to be very curious, very friendly and curious. And I'm a curious person too. So like I felt really connected with them. Almost everybody I met in Vietnam was very interested to learn about the story. And I think I can see why Jimmy connected with people in that culture. Also, Vietnamese people are extremely resilient. This is also something I took with me because this is a country that was basically at war or attacked for like, hundreds of years and most of the 20th century up until 1975. In fact, right now, we're just about approaching the 50-year anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. But
right.
pretty much all of the 20th century up until that point, they were either attacked by the Chinese or the French or the US or the Civil War with the communists. And so um, they are not a culture that that wastes their time in self-pity or mourning, or I mean, well, of course they're mourning, but like they turn the page and like have created like a beautiful new society. So I do, I think there's a balance. I should say that, like, mourning and grieving is great, but then at some point, like you have to turn the page and you have to like move on with your life. So I would say I feel that in Vietnamese culture, and I also feel that in my family. I think that I think he didn't feel, I mean, he did pretty much say he didn't feel comfortable in the US. It was a really difficult time in the US because um the old guard from the 50s and 60s was still in power in Washington, and the young people like were rebellious against the war. They were rebellious against conservative values. And I think I learned something. Here's something I learned with the filming is that when you're in a war zone, whether it's, Afghanistan or Vietnam, it's a very heightened emotional environment. It's very passionate. And so there actually tends to be a lot of love affairs in war zones. It's something that I didn't really know about. There's a lot of like feeling like, well, the world is going to end and we're all going to die anyway. So like we better make love now. And like we better,
Yeah.
seize the day and enjoy life. And I think he really loved that like immediacy of life in Vietnam, where it was like today may be your last day, so enjoy it and eat and drink, and experience the joys of life while you can. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of my favorite authors is a man named Armistead Maupin, who wrote the books Tales of the City. And he explains that like families, no matter how loving a family is, they can't fill all of your needs. And so you can create what's called a family of choice or a logical family. And I think that I have gone outside of my family um, to seek, having conversations about my being gay or, that role in life. And I think to have somebody within the family where I could have that conversation would be amazing. It would be also, I mean, of course, we always want to ask questions, like there's a million questions I would ask him, Jimmy, about my mom and about um, his life. And so I think that's just the cruelty of death is like, you just literally can't ask questions anymore. All you can do is imagine. And that's what I'm going through with my mom a little bit, like because she died, um, I can't ask her questions, but I have to kind of imagine what she would say. And I think that's the next best choice. So I do see Jimmy and my mom both as role models for me, even in their death. Like I try to have a spiritual connection to Jimmy and to my mom. Well, meeting her was really the reason I was able to complete the film. I mean, it's really the core crux scene of the film, and just her kindness and generosity in being so candid and honest and lovely with me and inviting me into her home was incredible. Her family was incredible to me, and this is another aspect of Vietnamese culture that I love, like, just so kind and generous and welcoming, and she could have easily said no. And yeah, my meeting with her, it's a very it was hard to film in that environment because there's so much going on, grandkids and kids and TV and video games and noises and distractions. But I had an excellent cameraman and we were able to make it work. So it was a big day. It was one of the most important days of my life when I met her. It wasn't necessarily relaxing, but it was really important.